Welcome to Global Perspectives. Presidents, kings, and convicts, what do they all have in common? For insights, we turn to former Congressman Bob Clement of Tennessee.
Global Perspectives with Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator John Bercia.
Welcome to the show, Bob.
John, great to be with you again.
Wonderful. And I'm interested in all three, presidents, kings, and convicts, but why don't we start with the king, Elvis Presley. I know you had a chance to meet him, and tell us about that briefly.
Well, that's one part of why I named it that particular title, but Elvis Presley came to the governor's residence once upon a time. Colonel Tom Parker, his manager that lived in Nashville, Tennessee, and called my father, Governor Frank G. Clement, who was governor of Tennessee at the time, says, Elvis is in town. And Dad said, bring him out to the governor's residence. So he brought him out, but Dad also called the state penitentiary, Droopy Edwards, and said, bring the Prisonaires out. They were a special singing group at the penitentiary. All of them had 99-year sentences, and the lead singer, Johnny Bragg, had 96 99-year sentences. But they were great entertainers, had plenty of time to practice too. And so it was just the Clement family and Elvis and Colonel Tom Parker and my mother and dad and the governor's kids. And he stayed till 3 o'clock in the morning. He got so carried away playing, singing and playing with the Prisonaires and playing the piano and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think there's no doubt from his exposure with the Prisonaires where he got the idea about Jailhouse Rock and others because of that great experience.
Interesting. So you had a king and prisoners, convicts, at one session, but tell us about the other part of the title of your new book.
Well, Presidents, Kings, and Convicts. I've had the opportunity to meet every president from President Harry Truman all the way through Obama. The early ones, because of my father being governor of Tennessee and lived in the governor's residence for 10 years. So I had those early times because of my father's experience, but also because of my own career as Public Service Commissioner, TVA Director, and college president and member of Congress. And then convicts is because my father's governor, former FBI agent, worked about 30 prisoners a day at the governor's residence. So I grew up with prisoners and the Highway Patrol, and the Highway Patrol had a job to do, but the prisoners had plenty of time to play basketball and football and pool tournaments, etc. with me. So that's why I named it Presidents, Kings, and Convicts.
You also had a long stint with the U.S. military.
Well, I did. After I finished college and got my graduate degree, I went in the U.S. Army for 2 years and discharged a first lieutenant, and then I got in the Tennessee Army National Guard and served another 29 years.
Wow. Tell us about your congressional career. That's the one that most people know you for these days. And what was that like? What were the high points, the low points, if there were any?
Well, I was elected in January of 1988 in a special election. It's the Nashville district, or you might call the Hermitage district, because two of my predecessors were Andrew Jackson and Sam Houston many, many years ago. And so I did feel like I represented a historic district, and I served for 15 years, for 8 terms. And I was one of the consensus builders, peacemakers, and I knew how to reach across the aisle, and that's what I talk about in the book, about reaching across the aisle, about hyperpartisanship. And I take it all the way from growing up in the governor's residence to career changes, but I get heavy into U.S. policy, U.S. Congress, and politics about fixing Congress and fixing America.
So let's talk about those points for a few minutes. Why is it that bipartisanship is so difficult these days? And is it impossible or virtually impossible now to reach across the aisle, or do we have potentially a period coming where that's going to happen again?
Well, John, it's difficult, and times have changed. People have changed. I don't think it's impossible. But what we did have, we used to work from Monday to Friday. Now they fly in on Tuesday and leave on Thursday. Now, if I don't know you and you don't know me, I'm not darn well not going to work with you to solve problems. And we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. There's a lot of apathy today. People vote on presidential elections, but then on midterm elections, you've got a heavy drop-off. You might have 10 to 15% of the people deciding who's going to represent you, which is not in the best interest. Congressional redistricting, I talk about that in the book. And Democrat districts are more Democrat, the Republican districts more Republican. Where we need some help, campaign finance reform, limit campaign spending. Candidates should earn the election, not buy the election. And all these are working against us now. And tax reform, that's a prime example too. I'm one of those that feel times come we need a modified flat tax. Let everyone participate in the process. And yes, keep the charitable deductions. Yes, keep the mortgage deduction. But have a modified flat tax, and I think it would be fair to everyone where everyone owns a piece of the rock.
Well, let's talk about the flat tax concept, because as a journalist, I followed this for many, many years, and initially there was a lot of opposition to it. And then people began to come around and think that, well, maybe a flat tax would be easier, certainly would be simpler for the taxpayer to fill out the form each year. But why do you think this might be the time to reconsider the flat tax concept?
Well, the way we do it now, over 50% now of the taxpayers do not pay any federal income tax at all. Now, they pay the FICA tax, the Social Security tax, but we've all got a stake in America, and that's the way we ought to look at it. For example, infrastructure. I know President Trump's making the comment now, I want to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure. I think that's great, being a former senior member of the Transportation Committee. But where are we going to get that $1 trillion? Because you got 90% of the Republicans have signed a pledge, I will never, ever vote for a tax increase. And it's going to be very interesting whether they break that pledge or whether we do what's best for America and spend some money that we need to spend to rebuild America, because the time's come for roads and bridges and for public transit and mass transit, because we got too much anxiety, too much frustration in the country, and that's what my book talks about.
Well, talk to us about infrastructure. How severe is the problem with aging infrastructure, and what kind of boon would this be for the country, not just in terms of rebuilding roadways and bridges and such, but in terms of creating jobs?
It'd be a huge economic boom in terms of tourism, in terms of economic development, in terms of jobs. This second Iraqi war, where we jumped to judgment, we're trigger happy, we spent close to $3 trillion. Now, if we could have taken that $3 trillion and spent it on America, about rebuilding America, where would we be today? And infrastructure is an absolute must. I know no one wants to raise taxes. I'm one of those people. I raised taxes, and I voted for tax cuts. I did both. I was a conservative, moderate Democrat. I was a consensus builder. I knew how to cross the aisle. I'm a Democrat, but I crossed the aisle with Republicans to get the job done, and that's what needs to happen again.
What is your biggest frustration with the infrastructure as it now stands?
Well, it's crumbling, and at a very rapid pace. And as you know, I'm former U.S. Congress from Nashville, Tennessee. That's the big issue now. In the past, it just wasn't a priority. It's got to be a priority now, or we're going to be like Atlanta and just absolutely shut down. I mean, we've got to devote some time and attention, and we got to have what I call political courage. And I think that's what's happening today, is that we don't have a lot of political courage. Let's look at the next generation rather than the next election.
Well, at one time, we seemed to have a lot of political courage, building a national interstate system, for example, and many other improvements to the infrastructure. But today, there seems to be a lot of, like you said, argument, impasses, and so forth. Do you think it's possible for the infrastructure to be rebuilt to the point that it needs to be? And what does it say about America, especially when people come here from other countries, whether they are official government visitors or people here on vacation? What does it say when they see this crumbling infrastructure?
Well, John, I've traveled all over the world, and I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Transportation Committee, and the Budget Committee. And I know what they're doing in other countries, particularly Europe and Asia, and what we're not doing in America. And we're falling further and further behind. And therefore, the time has come where I don't think we have a choice, but we got to make a major commitment. And that's why Mr. Trump and the administration, as well as members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, need to join forces and make it happen.
How do you build those bridges between Democrats and Republicans today? You mentioned that they're not in town as much as they used to be. There aren't as many opportunities for some after-hours camaraderie. How do you start moving back in the direction of bipartisan policies, especially when it comes to foreign policy, where we seem to always have a consensus on what we should do in terms of big challenges?
Well, foreign policy, President naturally has a lot to say about that, and particularly the U.S. Senate when it comes to treaties, etc. But Congress and the U.S. Senate working with the President, and I hope Mr. Trump will be diplomatic, particularly on the international front, John, because we can send a lot of wrong messages overseas, and people got to realize we only have 5% of the world's population. 95% live outside our borders, and we just need to be careful about the kind of messages we send. But there are a lot of issues on the plate, and I wish Mr. Trump well. I didn't vote for him, but I wish him well, and I want him to succeed when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to health care, when it comes to education, because I'm one of those people feel that's the best, easiest, cheapest way to save our middle class is through public education, because the middle class is truly being squeezed today.
You traveled both as a congressman and separately to many, many parts of the world, as you just mentioned. What were some of the places you visited that were most impressive, most impactful, and what kind of message did you deliver to your audiences in those places?
Well, I would say Europe, naturally with their magnificent train system that they have, and China. I'll never forget visiting China, and mayor of Shanghai shared with me, says, Congressman Clement, we have 17% of all the building cranes in the world in my one city. And then I meet with the Minister of Education in China. He says, Congressman, we are educating more, we're teaching Chinese more English than your entire population of the United States, 230 million people. So it's remarkable what other countries are doing that we're not doing. I know we think as Americans, I mean, we're the superpower on earth, but that's going to change, and it is changing rapidly, where it'll be United States and the People's Republic of China will be the two great superpowers on earth. But we have much to learn from other countries, and I know we've had many opportunities to talk about those issues as well. And I want to congratulate you on year 2000, you being the Pulitzer Prize winner. That's a big deal, and I followed your career, and I've been proud of it too.
Well, thank you, and proud of you as well. When you talk to people in other countries who oftentimes know more about us than we know about them, how do you explain to them that there doesn't seem to be as much interest in them and their culture as they have in us and our culture?
Well, internationals really follow what the United States does or fail to do. I don't expect that to change because we are the superpower, which means we have commitments and obligations. But we want to help our own people too, and I think that's why there's been so much unrest in recent years here in the United States. Maybe it's time for Americans to help Americans, and nothing wrong with that. And maybe people got sick and tired of too much so-called political correctness, and nothing wrong with that. But we as Americans must be respectful and understanding of people from other lands, their faith, their background, their culture. We have much to learn from other countries, and we need to be good listeners. And I think a lot of times we talk a lot, but we ought to be listening rather than talking.
Well, and I would agree with you. And what's interesting to me is over the years, over the decades, so many people from so many places have come to be part of America's fabric. And oftentimes we don't even have to turn to anyone who's far away to get information about another culture or country, because they're right here. And we often don't seem to take advantage of that opportunity either.
I'm just pleased to be here at University of Central Florida, and I had the opportunity to represent the University of Central Florida on the international front, and I know how y'all are reaching out. When I share with others about the size and magnitude and scope of University of Central Florida, they're amazed. And I mentioned about being the second largest university in the United States, and that's a big deal. And the University of Central Florida has done such a good job nationally and internationally. I congratulate them very much, and I've been pleased to be a part of their future.
Well, that's wonderful, but what about the average American? How can we inspire the average American to become more interested in other people in other countries?
Well, I've been talking about that a lot, and I mentioned that in the book about apathy. And we come out for the presidential election, then what happens? We go home. And then on midterm elections, we're lucky to get 15% of the electoral vote to vote at all, because they just don't participate. I don't mind people disagreeing with me. I think you can have a difference of opinion without having a difference of principle. Those that I fall out with just don't vote at all. I know my Aunt Annabelle, Clement O'Brien, was state senator from Tennessee, and people come to see her all the time. And then finally she just asked, "Are you registered to vote?" "Oh, no, I don't vote." "Well, you go register to vote, then come back to see me and I'll help you." And I think that's true with all of us. In some countries, they fine you if you don't vote. But we don't do that in the United States, and I don't see that happening. But we've got to keep up with the issues, the candidates, what they stand for, what they believe in, and vote. And if we do that, all these other problems are going to solve itself.
The world today is arguably one of the most difficult points in its history. As you look around the planet, maybe in order of importance, what would be the regions to you that are most important, that have the most serious issues, and that deserve the most attention from the United States?
Well, we'd have to always say, Middle East, that's still major hot spot. Naturally, North Korea, because the leader is that's an absolute cult. And I'll never forget Congressman Tony Hall from Ohio going over there. They kept referring to their leader as if he was God. And finally, he walked over to the window because he was meeting with the top generals in North Korea. Said, well, who made that tree? Oh, our leader made that tree, talking about the father of the leader now. Well, who made that grass? Oh, our leader's responsible for that grass. Just totally brainwashed. And I think that's a very serious hot spot today.
It seems to me that you've got this wonderful repository of talent in the former members of Congress group. How often are they called upon for advice, for input? And if you were called on for advice or input, specifically on the issue of North Korea, what would you recommend at this point?
Well, I'm called on regularly with the former members of Congress Association because I'm on the board. So I meet with them. And then we have what's called Congress to Campus. And gosh, Lou Fry here has been outstanding, and other former members from all over the country. And what I would say about North Korea is that I don't know whether sanctions work or not, but even if you give them aid, they find a way of getting around that aid to using that money for other purposes with military hardware and missiles and all that. And how you work with someone like we're having to talk to now, this leader, because his father was president, his grandfather was president. It's a cult. They just carve off areas of the country at times when they don't have the food and let them die, and then they have buildings where you think it's a building, but out behind the structure is nothing. I mean, that's how out of step they are, and it's just something we got to monitor. And I know their neighbors, Asian neighbors, are worried about it. Naturally, China within 24 hours could shut them down if they so desire, and that may have to happen in order to move us forward. But that hadn't happened yet.
So you mentioned the Middle East. You mentioned North Korea. Are there other parts of the world that we should be paying particular attention to?
I would like to think, John, that the agreement we have with Iran will hold. Now, we don't know whether it will or not, and if they breach the agreement, then we're going to have to confront it. I do think we should honor the agreement, and I think Mr. Trump needs to be very careful about tampering with that and changing it. If they break it, they breach it, that's a different ball game. Then we've got to look at it again, but revisit it. But we need to honor our agreements that we've made, whether it's in a Democrat administration or Republican administration, and let the rule of law prevail.
We're running out of time, but I wanted to ask you, as you travel around talking about the book, do you have any other countries on your schedule, or are you mostly talking about it here?
It'll be in the United States, and matter of fact, I'm getting ready to go to Washington, D.C., and having a book signing there. A fellow congressman, former Congressman Bart Gordon from Tennessee is having a book signing, and there'll be a lot of people from the D.C. area and other places that'll come for the book signing, and I'm doing one at the Villages here in Florida as well, Barnes and Noble, and around Tennessee and other places. So I'm having a good time this year sharing my book with the world. I really wrote it initially for my family and friends, but then the scope got larger. But I'm glad I wrote it because so many of us live a life and work and all that, and then after the fact, people, or even our own family, don't even know what we did, or what we stand for, what we believe. And so that's why I wrote the book, because that was on my bucket list. I kept good notes, and I hope everyone else will keep good notes. They don't have to write a book, but just keep information together so that next generation will know what you're all about.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Bob Clement.
Thank you, John. You're a great friend.
And thank you. For Global Perspectives, I'm John Bercia. We'll see you next time.